What a night of Cincinnati Reds news last night. Depending what day you're listening to, we're talking about Wednesday night. Nick Krall joined the Reds hot stove. And I'm not going to lie, 5 minutes into it, I was like, this is just a bunch of word salad. This is a whole lot of nothing. And then they came back from break and we got all sorts of tidbits. And I'm going to explain to you a lot of what Krall said. We'll talk about it and we'll go from there. We finally learned why Elly De La Cruz struggled in the second half of 2025. Kyle Schwarber was also back in Cincinnati last night, speaking about the possibility of signing with your Cincinnati Reds. And Nick Krall publicly defended Hunter Greene in one of the strongest comments we've heard from him all offseason. Let's get into it. But before we get into it, listen, I'm not sponsored. I don't have any big name sponsors. So the only thing I ask for you is please like the stream, please comment, please tell a friend, please subscribe, do all that fun stuff. I try to give you guys content, try to keep you guys updated. So we appreciate you watching. No sponsors for now. Maybe that'll change. But for now, you get just sponsorless, free YouTube stuff. What more can you ask for? Or maybe you're listening to it on Apple Podcast. I don't know. But let's dive into it. So, like I said, Elly De La Cruz was basically, we figured out why he was struggling in the second half of 2025. And on Wednesday night, like I said, we finally got the truth behind it. Appearing on the Reds hot stove, Reds president of baseball operations, Nick Krall, revealed that Elly played through a partially torn quad in 2025. Here's the exact quote from Krall. Toward the end of July, he was dealing with a partially torn quad. He has been rehabbing. He was at the ballpark today. He has been rehabbing this whole offseason. To his credit, he played every day. He tried to grind through it. He tried to play through it. Krall then pointed out that Elly had just 12 errors before the injury, and he kind of hinted that the injury appeared in late July, and he had 14 after the injury. And Krall kind of led on that those 14 were as a result of trying to push through the pain. Listen, De La Cruz's hitting also took a big hit. In the first half of the season, Elly slashed 284, 359, 495 with 39 extra base hits and 25 stolen bases. In the second half, those numbers dropped to 236, 303, 363 with only 21 extra base hits and just 12 stolen bases. He wasn't hitting for power as much. He wasn't running as much. Krall continued by saying he had a stretch of games where he had 19 home runs and he didn't hit one in September. That's going to affect him. That is going to affect everything he does. But to his credit, he was trying to play every single day through it. He tried to grind through it. But to the detriment of himself, he didn't play up to where he was. But a large part of that was because he was trying to play through the injury. Listen, we all knew something was off with Elly. There were hints that he was dealing with something, but the Reds didn't come out and say it. He didn't look the same in August, September, but the team never fully acknowledged with what he was dealing with until now. Look, I get it. You don't want to come out and say Elly's hurt and get fan backlash or have the other team get competitive advantage. But by not doing that, you have fans saying Elly's terrible, Elly's washed. You have fans speculating what's going on. I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Elly wants to play. He wants to be on the field every day. That's who he is. But sometimes you have to protect the player from himself. Elly is a 23-year-old superstar, and you got to think about his future. You can't have him out there losing confidence and playing hurt, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But here's where I will defend the Reds a little bit. The Reds were in a playoff race, and they ended up making the playoffs. Now, was it because of Elly De La Cruz? Not in the second half, but he helped them win games in the first half. So part of it was because of Elly De La Cruz. But you saw for 2 months essentially that Elly was not himself. You can't convince me that rest for 15, 20 days wouldn't have helped him be the player we saw in the first half. But where the Reds were probably coming from, they didn't have much depth. What were they going to do? Move Matt McLain to shortstop? McLain was just as bad as Elly in the second half, maybe worse. Are you going to play Espinal every day at second, Lux every day at second, even against left-handers? The Reds didn't have much depth, so if they put Elly on the injured list, it was going to be slim pickings. But you could say with Elly, he wasn't playing well anyway. So why does that matter? So there's all good points. I'm not trying to absolutely crap on the Reds here, but I just think you have to protect the player from himself. He clearly didn't have it. He was clearly going through something. They knew what he was going through, apparently, from Nick Krall's comments. And his numbers speak for themselves. He wasn't good defensively. He wasn't good offensively. He wasn't running. So why just keep running him out there instead of trying to get him healthy and, you know, be ready for the playoff push in the last month of the season? But they didn't, and the Reds ultimately made the playoffs. Elly struggled in the postseason too, but hopefully Elly De La Cruz comes back healthy in 2026, and we get the Elly De La Cruz we saw in the first half of the offseason. But that's kind of the Elly notes that we got from Krall last night. It's interesting that they chose at this point in time to come out with that information, but it is what it is. It's at least we get some offseason content. In other news, Kyle Schwarber was back in Cincinnati on Wednesday night, and he spoke openly about being back home. And he was also asked about the idea of signing with your Cincinnati Reds. Schwarber said, "It's always great. Whenever we are here, it's always fun for us. Our family's here, my wife's family. We've got all of our friends here. It's always fun for us to be here. This is a place that we call home. We love it here, and we're going to spend a lot of time here as a family in the future." Now, man, doesn't that sound just like a guy that wants to be in Cincinnati? I mean, get it done, Krall. Castellini, shell out some money. That just sounds like a guy who wants to be in Cincinnati. Schwarber had a massive 2025 season, slashing 240, 365, 563 with 81 extra base hits, including the league leading 56 home runs. Get that man a contract, but it's probably not going to happen. When asked directly about the Reds, Schwarber didn't rule anything out, but he kind of hinted at business decisions, which it feels like kind of he knows the Reds aren't going to shell out that kind of money. But here's his quote. "I think good old Gordon Whitmire," yeah, he said good old Gordon Whitmire, which if you know, you know. That's pretty funny, "was the one who started this frenzy at the All-Star game. He asked a question kind of similar to that, where I said, the kid in me, I grew up going to games there. I grew up sitting in the bleachers and watching lots of games. I think the kid would be excited, right? You have your hometown team that is calling. But also, being in the profession, knowing a little bit more about the ins and outs, you're never going to not be open. You always have to listen and keep different options open and see what happens. We will see." So that last little sentence, but also being in the profession, knowing a little bit more about the ins and outs, you're never not going to be open. You always have to listen and keep different options open and see what happens. What that tells me is, I would love to be here, but there's no chance the Cincinnati Reds are going to shell out the money that I am going to want in free agency. So I still think it feels unlikely that the Reds are going to spend to take what it lands or take, you know, to land a slugger like Schwarber. But I guess neither side has shut the door. And as long as that's the case, we'll keep running with the storyline. We'll keep talking about it. Maybe we'll will it in. If we make enough videos, if people keep commenting, maybe the Castellinis will give Nick Krall some money to go spend on a guy like Kyle Schwarber. But regardless, it's cool to hear him say how much he loves Cincinnati. You just love for a guy that wants to be in Cincinnati for the Reds to be able to go sign him, especially since he hit 56 home runs last year. But I digress. We'll move on. Nick Krall also spoke about Hunter Greene. I've talked a lot on this channel about the Hunter Greene drama. Was he hurt? Should he have came back earlier? Did he come back too soon? Blah, 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 blah. Mark Sheldon, Hunter Greene, Nick Krall. It's all over the place. We got trade rumors. Everything's happened about Hunter Greene this offseason. But last night, Nick Krall finally answered a question and kind of rallied behind his ace, which I like to see. There's been a ton of noise about him. Like I said, his name's been hopping up in trade rumors, friends questioning whether he should turn earlier. Mark Sheldon was questioning his pain tolerance. So Krall was kind of asked directly about Greene's health and trade rumors last night. And I'll read you his quote. "Hunter is a guy that when he is healthy, he's a top of the rotation starter. When a guy gets injured, though, it's really hard to say, oh, well, that guy isn't hurt. This guy is not hurt, and this guy isn't hurt. Sorry, this guy is hurt and this guy isn't hurt. That's not right. I had shoulder surgery 6 weeks ago. I can tell you there are days when I'm really hurting. I can tell you the same guy who had shoulder surgery might not feel the same pain. That's a tough thing to say." So that's nice for Krall to kind of come out and support Greene and say it's silly to suggest that he should have been back sooner. Now, again, Sheldon doubled down on his reporting. He clearly had people inside of the organization telling him things. But regardless, even if that was Nick Krall at the time, the Reds needed to come out at this point in time and support Greene because it does no good. He's under contract through 2029. It does no good to just chuck your ace under the bus. So, like I said, a lot of this stems from the Mark Sheldon article around the All-Star break. And if you've watched this channel regularly, you've probably already heard this, but just bear with me for the new people here. That implied Greene might have been healthy enough to return sooner. Sheldon wrote, despite a clean MRI exam on July 7th, Greene reported symptoms and canceled a rehab assignment. It's being left up to Greene to determine when he can resume pitching. But for a guy with a long-term contract who says he wants to be a leader, Greene needs to start showing it and get back on the field. When he is, he could be one of the best starters in baseball. Again, this is a guy that's hurt, and Sheldon is kind of saying, hey, he needs to get back on the field, which again, he said he's getting information from sources he talks to, which is obviously inside the Reds organization, that think, hey, he's fine to come back and pitch. So that's what Sheldon kind of doubled down on this past week. And Krall went on finally to support him last night. And here's the last thing Krall said. He was also asked about the trade rumors. He kind of hit on this as well here. He said, guys pitched through a lot of different things. Hunter grinded through the end of the year. It's really tough to get rid of a top of the rotation starter. I'm not ever going to say never, but it's really a tough thing to do. Tough thing to actually do. This is probably the strongest public showing of Hunter Greene we've seen all offseason. And to me, that matters. Just stop with the drama. We had Hunter Greene a couple nights ago post an Instagram story about like it's all just talk, or talk is just, I forget what it was, but kind of seemed like a subtle little jab. We don't need this drama between Hunter Greene and the Reds. Just get on the same page, come out in 2026 stronger. Hunter needs to try to stay healthy. The Reds need to support him. It's not that hard. All this unneeded drama is crazy, but it is what it is. Again, Sheldon said the trade isn't completely off the table. He said basically said nobody's untouchable, but that's just saying the Reds would have to get blown away. A lot of people agree with that sentiment of, hey, everyone is tradable in the right package. I think you could look like someone like Luka Doncic in the NBA was probably thought as untouchable, and Nico Harrison just said, see you later, we'll give you to the Lakers, and now all of a sudden Nico Harrison is fired. And then also you don't want to say things that it looks dumb in the press if you end up trading Hunter Greene. I'm a huge college football fan. Jonathan Smith was the coach at Oregon State. He was an alum at Oregon State, and he said, this is my dream job. I will never leave. And then a couple of years ago, Michigan State came calling and offered him millions and millions and millions of dollars. And Jonathan Smith said, see you later. I'm out of here. And then all the Oregon State fans said, this guy is scum of the earth because he said he would never leave. So I also get Krall not wanting to put himself in that situation. But anyway, those are kind of the big things we heard from the hot stove last night with Nick Krall. They also mentioned Sal Stewart is trying to get in better shape this offseason, which that is good to hear. I think Stewart's going to be a huge part of this team in 2026. So in one night, we got clarity on Elly's struggles. Kyle Schwarber talks openly about basically wanting to be in Cincinnati, but he gets there's a business to this. And the front office is finally standing behind Hunter Greene. For Elly, this explains everything we saw in August and September. It makes his first half performance more impressive, I guess, more of like that's what we expect from Elly. For Schwarber, I guess we'll say the door is open, even though it's really not, but we'll say it is. And for Hunter Greene, this should hopefully put a lot of the drama to rest so he can focus on leading the rotation in 2026. A massive night for Reds news on a Wednesday in November. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for watching. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you dropping likes. Appreciate you subscribing. Appreciate you everything you do. Also, hit the notification bar so you get a little notification every time we post a video. But as always, thank you for being here. We'll leave you with the Go Reds. See you next time. See ya.